I am happy to introduce Rick Wilson to all of you. Rick is a seasoned political strategist, well versed in the art of negative ads. A 30-year veteran of politics, Rick got his start in the 1988 presidential campaign of George Herbert Walker Bush, and since has produced groundbreaking advertising and provided winning strategic counsel to political candidates, super PACs, state parties, the national campaign committees, and corporate association and government clients across the nation and around the world. He has been published in several publications, including The Washington Post, Politico, and Rolling Stone. His new book is the New York Times bestseller, Everything Trump Touches Dies. A leader of the Never Trump movement, his searing analysis of the president from the early days of Trump's campaign through his first year in office is a no-holds-barred critique of the damage Trump has done to the country, the Republican Party, and the conservative movement. Combining his signature dark humor with penetrating insight about today's politics, Wilson dissects Trump's deceptions, exposes the illusions his followers blindly follow, and calls out Trump's enablers among politicians and media figures. Yet dire as this situation is, Wilson is hopeful that the nation can find its way back to reason. In their review of the book, Kirkus Reviews calls the book hilarious, smartly written, and usually spot on. Someone had to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Wilson.
Wow, fantastic crowd tonight. Well, thank you again all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate everyone's support and the reaction to the book. What I want to do tonight, I'm going to read a couple of pieces for you. There's a couple of my favorite little bits out of the book. But I like to do this mostly to try to do as much Q&A as we can, as much interaction as we can, because you guys are all smart. And I think that's a lot of fun. And I think the C-SPAN audience will enjoy that also. Yeah, C-SPAN. Everybody gets like nerd points tonight. It's fantastic, right? All right, give me a second here, because I'm going to find a couple pieces for you that I like. I don't know how many of you read the book already. Okay, a good number of you. In between the chapters, there are these little interstitial chapters that tell a story, or a couple of stories actually. And one of them is called Inside the Oval Office, a Tragedy in 5 Acts. And in each one of these little interstitial stories, in one of them I tell the story of a hypothetical White House appointee, a cabinet appointee. And I'll read you one of the pieces now. Act 4. One by one, they're all gone. Spicer, Bannon, Gorka, the mooch. Sure, Jared and Ivanka are still around, but these days they keep to themselves. You'd liked Tillerson and Price and Dearborn. It had been cool meeting a real-life celebrity like Omarosa. The place just slowly kept emptying out. You'd been able to move up to a slightly larger closet. The president, perhaps twice or even 4 times a week, would summon you to the Oval. Once you heard Hope Hicks hiss into her phone, "He's talking to his pet again." Soon she was gone too. You tried to give the president good advice when he asked for it, but most of the time he didn't ask. He just talked and talked and talked. It was the spring of 2018 when you noticed something you'd tried to avoid for a long time. Donald Trump wasn't just a little off kilter. He wasn't just different. As much as you loved him and your job at the White House, it was frightening to see him up close, unfocused, agitated, and as much as you hated to admit it, delusional. You didn't have the heart to tell him that the wall wasn't already over 3,000 miles long, or that Robert Mueller had never been a high priest in a satanic child cannibalism ring based in the Target store in Alexandria, Virginia. Maybe the GDP wasn't up 41% as the president claimed. Was it Mueller? Russia? Maybe. Was it Stormy Daniels? Almost certainly. He talked about her bangability with you time and again, counseling you to follow the old grab 'em strategy he'd perfected over the decades. You didn't have the time to get your dry cleaning, much less date. Finally, the grim day arrived. John Kelly resigned. Jim Mattis took a walk. Almost none of the original cabinet remained. Zinke's perp walk shocked no one except POTUS. The corruption cases mounted, domestic policy achievements fell flat, and 2019 looked bleak as hell. The House fell in the fall of 2018's electoral sweep by Democrats. The Senate was a tie. The idea of getting the president out on the stump for his re-election campaign kept being deferred, ostensibly because the president was so busy, but in reality because he was so broken and crazy. The Mueller investigation ground on with the broken White House now largely abandoned. The elections in the fall of 18 made it clear there wouldn't be much MAGA anymore. Melania had been out on a permanent Be Best tour and had been romantically linked to the head of her security detail. The president hardly seemed to care or even remember her. All he could talk about was Mueller. Then abruptly, the president looked up and said, by the way, in the course of these little interstitials, he calls the guy by a different name in every single one because he can't remember. Then abruptly, the president looked up and said, "Fartknocker, I don't think you're cut out for this job. I asked you to save America, and all you've done is betray me." You don't know where it came from. You thought everything was fine. You'd done your best to clean up the messes the old members of the cabinet and executive branch appointees had left behind. You realized something right then. He's loyal to nothing and no one. Anyway. Hang on one second. Let me give you one more bit that's not one of the interstitial pieces. I dismantle a lot of the people that were Trump enablers or Trump sycophants or people who should have done a better job in the primary. So I think since all of you are probably Ted Cruz fans, we'll read his section now. Ted Cruz. Long a poster boy for the Purity Posse, Cruz was the alpha dork of the Senate Conservatives Fund, a Texan elected in the wake of 2010. He came into the 2016 race with all the conservative purist cred in the world. He was the darling of the Mercer Money Clan, had talk radio singing hosannas on how he was the leader of a bold conservative tomorrow. All those qualities were in inverse proportion to his less obvious physical and personal charms. More than almost any other member of the 2016 field, Ted Cruz helped normalize Trump, burning his credibility to a toasty crisp. Cruz, who would later hear Trump accuse his father of complicity in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and stood meekly as Trump insulted Cruz's wife. He told Fox News, "I like Donald Trump. I think he's terrific. I think he's brash. I think he speaks the truth." Ted even lost the support of his longtime sugar daddy, Robert Mercer, and nodded politely through it all. In 30 years, I've never seen a politician engage in acts of greater self-humiliation. Many of the Republican candidates have gone out of their way to take a 2x4 to Donald Trump. I think it's a mistake, Cruz told Tim Alberta of Politico. Now look, Ted is a bright guy. There's no question he's much, much smarter than the average bear. However, like quite a few smart people, Cruz has a massive blind spot when it comes to playground bullies, which I'm sure is obtained for the entirety of his life. Trump saw him from the jump as a mark. The tragedy of Ted Cruz sounds like a Marlowe play. The Faustian bargain Cruz made in his efforts to win over Trump voters has reduced him from Republican Party rock star to something akin to a Trump world house pet. Tolerated, occasionally praised, but mostly kept out of sight lest he soil the carpets. Ever ambitious and taken with his own perceived cleverness, Cruz still clings to two rather obvious dreams. The first is that of every man or woman who warms a seat in the Senate, the White House. The argument there is he can be the thinking man's Trump, the follow-on that smooths out the rough edges of nationalist populism and leads the nation into his glorious vision. His ambitions are both boundless and obvious. The other desire Cruz allies whisper is that he's the logical choice for a Trump Supreme Court pick. However, if Ted Cruz believes for one moment that President Trump is going to put the son of the man who killed JFK on the Supreme Court, he's got another thing coming. That job is being held for Anthony Scaramucci. All right. Thank you so much. And let's just hop right to the Q&A unless you guys have any big picture questions. I'm happy to answer them. Let's try to not cover the same ground too many times, but let's go. You, sir.
So given your political leanings tied with your vitriol hatred for Trump, would you find a better case scenario? Would you be okay with your standard Democrat nominee, go back, past, 16 years. Would any of them, in your mind, be okay given, given the reality we're in now, would you be okay with that as a better case?
Look, it's an interesting counterfactual. Okay, but here's what I know about Barack Obama as president. He didn't turn out to be a Kenyan Muslim sleeper agent trying to impose Sharia gay marriage on the country. And it turned out that he was pretty much a centrist technocratic Democrat. Bill Clinton was pretty much a centrist technocratic Democrat who was, a wandering everything. But, I think that the political distinction between this sort of broad political homeostasis in this country for a long time of the right doesn't hold too much power for too long, the left doesn't hold too much power for too long. I kind of miss that. And so the return to some sort of normal in the lanes presidency, either Republican or Democrat, I think is desirable over the authoritarian statism and the chaos of Trumpism. Mm-hmm. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
By the way,
yes, ma'am. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm just the opposite. I would vote for an empty suit if he or she was running against Trump.
Hell, I'd vote for a shaved bear.
I mean, I agree, and it sounds like a wonderfully entertaining and satisfying book. But what about the people in the country, the 30 or 40%, who would follow this man into hell? What are we going to do with them?
Well, three things are going to happen with those folks. The first thing is the actuarial tables are a bitch. And a lot of those people that love Donald Trump are at the peak end of the senior scale. That is the prime audience for Fox News, which feeds them a constant diet of fear of everything. And they're eventually going to age out of the population. Now, what Donald Trump has done to the Republican Party is he has foreclosed us talking for a generation or more to younger voters, African-American voters, educated voters, women voters, Hispanic voters. I could go on. But if the party of Lincoln is going to turn into the party of 55-year-old white dudes with GEDs looking at conspiracy websites in their basement, and so that's a time-limited function of the party. But the people that are involved in the Trump cult are also going to collide with reality. Trump hasn't been faced with a crisis yet, not a real crisis. Everything he's done is because he sets his own ass on fire. He has not been faced with any moment where look. If you look at the last three presidents in the first 2 years. Barack Obama faced the financial crisis of 2008, the full collapse or nearly full collapse of the financial sector in this country. George Bush faced 9/11. Right. Bill Clinton faced the 1999-2000 stock market collapse and the economic crisis. So all these guys were tested in their first 2 years. Donald Trump has managed by the luck of whatever feral creature he is, he's avoided an international or domestic crisis so far. When he's tested, those people are going to see that the guy they thought they elected, the guy from the TV show, and I write about this a lot in the book, for 14 years, Trump's audience, the kind of people who love him, watched shows like The Apprentice. And what did they see? Masterful negotiator, respected businessman, brilliant judge of character, internationally respected, all these things. That's not Donald Trump. That's the character he plays on TV. That's the Real Housewives of Bulgaria version of him that those people bought into. They believed that was Donald Trump. He's a 40-year public figure with a high profile, and they bought all that image. And every time he gets tested, Helsinki, South Korea, all these other matters, every single action, the guy runs up into a buzzsaw of reality. Those people are going to face that reality. Third thing is, when the economy does take a hit from the trade war and everything else he's doing, and this unsustainably large tax bill, and by the way, as a Republican, I love low taxes, but this tax bill was written because a friend of mine wrote it, for 150 hedge fund guys on Wall Street.
Right.
Okay?
Exactly.
Everybody else in this country, and Republicans are like, I'm getting my Trump bonus. No, you're not. And in 2 years, it goes away anyway. So, that thing is that's a time bomb. There's a lot of economic minefields he's set up for himself. And so when that happens, who gets screwed hardest? The people that love Trump the most. Okay.
From your lips
Thank
to
you, ma'am.
God's ears.
Hi.
Hi.
Whoops. Almost broke it. Perhaps the answer is in the book. I've only gotten through the first couple of pages.
Okay.
But do you think
I can't believe you weren't prepared.
Huh? I gotta get signed. Do you think there was? Do you think Trump's nomination his nomination was just sort of a kind of a one-off, sort of a comedy of errors, or do you think there was some structural problem in the Republican Party where there was a core of voters that that
I
were
detail
not being
this.
addressed?
I detail this in the book, and yes, there were voters in the Republican Party who were part of the who really liked the idea they were going to get a transgressive, super aggressive asshole to be their avatar. There was a group of people that liked that. I call them the purity posse. These are the people that always say things like, well, my God, the Republicans have 54 votes. Why can't they pass every single thing through the Senate that they want? Well, math. And there were people that wanted that. But the bigger factors were the responsible adults in the room. And I talk about this in the book. The money people were divided up and they were playing this calculus game. And it was Jeb's supporters were like, well, I'm going to wait till he takes out Marco because I hate Marco. And the Marco guys were like, yeah, he'll take out Ted Cruz first and then we'll skate past him. You know, they played this incredibly dumb game while Trump was sucking up all the media in the room. And they had an opportunity. I write about this in the book. I sent a memo and I said, you can spend $10 million now to cut this cancer out of the party. You can get in this now with $10 million in New Hampshire or Iowa. Or before he gets the nomination, you can spend $100 million. Or after he wrecks the Republican Party and destroys the conservative movement, wrecks the country, you can spend billions of dollars trying to get back. So there were a lot of people, there were a lot of bad actors in this situation. There were a lot of things that happened. Trump being sui generis as a candidate was a huge factor in this. And as I previously described, the sort of reality TV thing they thought was real and bought into. And look, there is a desire for the transgressive jerk figure in people who feel marginalized politically. And I'm not going to compare him to Hitler because Hitler had normal sized hands. But you see this time and again in authoritarians where their line is, I'm going to take revenge on the elites for you. I'm going to be the guy who pushes the people who read books and who know things and who are experts and who hate you. I'm going to teach them a lesson. It's an old part of the authoritarian song, and he sings it really well for those people. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
I did actually read the entire book.
Good for you. A+.
And I want to thank you for coining a word that will stay with me always. And that word is douchehenge to describe the wall. And sometimes I just laugh out loud by myself when I read it.
Douchehenge is what I call Trump's models of the wall.
Right. It was literally a perfect word.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you to reflect not on that guy in the White House so much, but on how the ground was laid for him in some ways. And I disclose that I am Democrat.
No way.
Love this city. Love my city. Love the government. Everything that you probably hate, I love.
I lived in DC for 12 years. I love this city.
But you hated the government.
Well, look, I think government is enormous, clumsy, stupid, prone to misdirection, has terrible design sense. But other than that, no.
No, my serious question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. My serious question is, I wonder if you could reflect on the straight line from the intellectually defensible conservative view of small government to the Tea Party, to the demeaning of, and then the demonizing of government that now exists, that laid the groundwork for somebody like Trump, because to me, that is as dangerous a problem as we have in this country, that there is no trust in this government anymore because of 20 years of that rhetoric.
But the government has also spectacularly failed in a million things it's tried to do over the years. And we can argue the causation problem of that. But government often overpromises and underperforms. And that's in business, we know that that's the exact opposite of what you ought to do. But I will say this. After 2010, there became a self-reinforcing media silo in this country. It involved the predominance of Fox News rising in the ratings and controlling 90 million households of viewers, where Republicans were getting basically all of their news. The talk radio sphere became almost dominated entirely by conservative talk hosts. And finally, the rise of social media, where people could silo themselves into one particular news hole. Yeah. And maybe that news outlet was called Real True Patriot Eagle Forum News 2000 Palin.com, but they believed it because their friends were sharing it on their Facebook pages. So the biggest issue here of laying the groundwork for Trump was the separation of the country into entirely separate media silos, and politics has persistent rhythms throughout it over time, but not always a through line you can connect with exact, fidelity. So thank you.
Hey, Rick, this is really a pleasure to talk to you. And I've got to tell you that you're really great whenever you're on with Julie Mason on the press pool.
Thank you so much. We did it today. She's a great show. She's a great interviewer.
I think you may know an old colleague of mine, Dane Walters, but we can talk about that afterwards. And first, kind of like a jokey separated birth question. Have you and John Heilemann ever been seen in a room at the same time?
We were on Morning Joe together a couple of weeks ago, and I was wearing a natural color linen jacket. He was wearing a natural linen jacket. And he was wearing a blue shirt, and I was wearing a pink shirt, but the same sort of flowered tie. Yes, so we're often mistaken if we're sitting down. But John is about 3 feet taller than me. He's like 7'9" or whatever. He's like a hill giant.
Well, I'll get you a Wu-Tang Clan laptop
please.
For Halloween. But
protect your neck.
Yeah, for my serious question.
Y'all didn't get that joke, did you? That's a Wu-Tang joke.
Ari Melber would get it.
Ari would get it.
Do you think that there's an irony in the fact that if and when the Republican Party is ready to rebuild itself, that they're going to find their all-star team on MSNBC, the Steve Schmitz and the Mark McKinnons and Nicole Wallace, and then you think about the intellectuals. I was listening to something Julie was saying today about how the Republican Party isn't the party of ideas. And you can go on MSNBC and see Bill Kristol or George Will talking. So
the irony of this thing is part of Trumpism is rabid anti-intellectualism. As my friend
Richard
Tom,
Hofstadter, right?
As my friend, yes, and my friend Tom Nichols, the death of expertise, and they say things like, "Well, you guys didn't beat Obama, and therefore everything you've ever done is a failure." Well, people like us have built this system. We elected George Bush a couple of times, and politics is a win and lose game. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But we also elected over 1,000 Republicans in a 10-year span to state legislatures all over this country, statewide officials all over this country. We had a quiet revolution of people who knew what they were doing. And now, if you want to go ahead and take out smartly targeted and tested TV ads based on voter data and outreach programs based on research and polling and survey research and substitute it for rallies where you have a blonde guy screaming, kick their ass in front of the stage. Let's try that. Let's try it that way. We'll see how 18 works, and we'll see how 20 works if you want to go with Trumpism. So that death of expertise thing is definitely embedded in Trumpism very strongly.
Well, thank you so much for writing
thank
this.
You.
If we're going to be crying for the next couple of years, we might as well be laughing along the way. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
You attack Trump from a conservative center-right position. What common cause do you find with center-left and far-left outlets?
Rule of law. I'm kind of a fan of that.
Like the crooked media or even the Chapo Trap House types.
So on the crooked media types, Anna Marie Cox and I have been friends for 20 years, since New York back in the 90s. And now to throw the compliment, she obviously was in her teens then because she can't be that old because I'm old as hell. But look, one of the things that the previously mentioned self-reinforcing media silo does is sets off people on the Republican side, particularly like, oh my God, you went on MSNBC. And what did I say? Was I talking about universal health care or taxing the rich or eating the oligarchs? No. You make a point as a conservative on these networks, and you're considered that you've betrayed the movement in some way. Well, too bad. This is an open field. You ought to fight for your ideas wherever you fight for your ideas. Now, Fox doesn't have me on because they don't want me to go in there and bust up their little reality bubble at night. Because they want to say that Donald Trump is a 60-foot tall golden god who stands astride the greatest era of prosperity ever. And, I don't play that. But the fact that I make a point to go where I can make a point is not about the ideological slant of the network or the outlet. It's about where I want to make a point. So And you know what? If you got a good idea, you should be able to articulate it anywhere. That's one of the problems with the conservative media space now. For a generation, they said, our ideas are so good, if people could just hear a fair reporting of our views on taxes, the economy, race, foreign policy, national security, we'd be fine. Well, now they have their own network and their own bubble that they will not leave, and they will condemn anyone who steps outside of it because they hate challenge to that worldview. And, you know, you don't get a better set of ideas and a better set of policies, a better politics, unless you have some dynamic tension between your view and other views. And you don't test out and go slam ideas up against other people's ideas.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to see you in person.
Thank you so much.
And I love your book. Lindsey Graham. Sorry. Ostensibly one of John McCain's closest friends a couple of years ago was warning the Republican Party not to fall in line behind Trump, that it would be a disaster.
Yeah.
And now he plays golf with him. He sort of carries water for Trump, and in the wake of this flag thing with yesterday with McCain, he seems to have abandoned his principles. Is he being compromised in some way?
I think he's being compromised by his own ambition. And that's the saddest thing for me, because Lindsey was a good friend of John McCain's, and he was somebody who was an ally of John's in a number of fights where John was going to take a more iconoclastic view of things. And I just want to take a quick aside outside the book for a second. I was just about to go on Nicole Wallace yesterday when the news broke that Trump had given in and lowered the flag again. That moment, that 8 hours yesterday, between the time that story broke and the time that he reversed his decision, it may seem like a petty thing on Trump's part, but that was a man who sought to normalize his personality cult above heroism and dedication and patriotism and service and fidelity to this country. And I'm really glad he lowered the flag, because I was about to go on the air and lose my damn shit. It was not going to be pretty. This is a guy who and Lindsey trying to accommodate Trump and trying to the best case scenario is he's manipulating Trump. The worst case scenario is when you're trying to manipulate somebody like that, who's a master at it. They know you're trying to play them. And Lindsey will eventually, Trump will turn on him and devour him eventually. You know what? You feed the alligator the last biscuit in the bucket, and it's going to take your arm. And that's what Lindsey's going to learn one day.
Thank you.
Hey.
Hi. Thanks for taking the question.
You bet.
So how do you respond to Republicans who say, well, at least Trump's getting 2 Supreme Court picks, possibly more? When you look back on the situation in the 2016 election, would the picks from Hillary, do you think, been a better scenario? How do you respond as a Republican?
There was no scenario where I thought, yay, Hillary. Okay. I wasn't a fanboy of Hillary Clinton by any stretch. And I thought her nominees would have been in the normal sort of range of Democratic nominees. But I want to step back on the Supreme Court argument for a second, because as an actual constitutionalist and not one of these, guys who treats the Constitution like a Chinese menu, the founders intended us to have 3 co-equal branches of government. They intended those branches to all work in a sort of dynamic between them. Republicans are now doing what Democrats did for years, which is fetishizing the Supreme Court and thinking, well, we're screwed because our ideas suck and we can't get these things done in the legislative side. The president can't pass a damn thing because he's incompetent. So we'll just kick it to the courts and that'll settle everything for us. And that, to me, is something that is a broken way to approach a constitutional government and a republic. So I think that there's a meaningful chance that we will be surprised, as Supreme Court justices do, when John Roberts drifts into the center. The court, corrects itself largely over time. If they're going to look at those 2 things also as their big wins, then President McConnell should be really proud, because Donald Trump could not pick Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh out of a lineup. He couldn't identify them if they bit him on the ass before this. Those guys were a product of the Federalist Society. and of Mitch McConnell and a lot of people in the conservative movement who worked for a long time to get those guys elevated up through the system. So I don't look at those as a Trump triumph. He's going to claim them as that, but again, the larger question of, do you fetishize any branch of the government and say, if only we control X, we control the world? It never works out the way people think. So thank you.
Thanks.
I would suggest that 50% of the country, including everybody in this room, hates Trump. I would suggest that 30% of the country will follow Trump anywhere. The other 20%, they don't like Trump, but they hate the Democrats worse than they're ever going to hate Trump. So what do you have to say to the 20%?
Well, the 20%, and I think your typology is pretty close, but actually I think it's about 60% hate Trump and about 25% will follow him into the gates of hell. So the remaining swing is a little smaller, I think, than yours. But here's the thing. Those people right now, a lot of those people voted for him in 2016. And those people were college-educated Republican women. Those were educated voters more broadly. And a lot of those folks have left the Republican Party already. And the electoral college map deludes people into thinking that the split is for him is bigger than it was. So I think that it was a very close run thing. We would be looking at the demographics of this. We'll be looking at the demographics of this in 2 years with a shrunken Republican base. It's intense as hell, but it's smaller now. And again, that joke I make about the party of Lincoln becoming the party of the 55-year-old dude, there's only a certain number of 55-year-old dudes in the country. And a lot of the people that are in that swing middle area are drifting away from Trump because of his affect, his behavior, his crudity. And people say, oh, that doesn't matter. Only results and policy matter. Guess again. Because if you looked at, does policy matter over affect? Then Barack Obama would have gotten his ass handed to him in 2008 by John McCain, who had a raft of assets and accomplishments a mile long, as opposed to a guy who'd been in the Senate for 2 years. Affect matters, and style matters, and presentation matters. And Trump every day drives a few more people out of the old Republican pool. And those people in the middle a lot of them are registering as independent or NPA, but they're going to functionally vote as Democrats, I think, coming in the future. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I think you definitely have a career as a stand-up political comedian when you get done with this career. I had two questions, but I'll just say one if you don't have time. If you consider the scenario, let's say that we're the House the Democrats take back the House, Republicans keep the Senate, and at that point, we still haven't heard from Mr. Mueller. Mm-hmm. Do you think at that point it would make sense and it's logically consistent for Democrats to start moving on impeachment?
Here's the thing about impeachment. Let's say the Democrats win 50 seats. Say they have a great day. They win 50 seats. That's a big day. That's Watergate Day. We lost 49 seats in 1974. And let's say they bring a bill of impeachment. And they in their investigation discover matters that are suitable to impeach the president. Even if the Democrats have a really great day in the Senate, we're never getting to 2/3 in the Senate. So do you take the risk that you end up doing what Republicans did to Bill Clinton and turning 98 into a much better year for Democrats by going after impeachment? Or if you have the power to investigate, do you begin to dismantle the administration brick by brick, step by step, day by day, taking apart the corruption that is so lavish and evident throughout all these departments, let Mueller keep grinding it out? Yes, perform the actual investigation of Russian interference that Devin Nunes has done everything he can to block. And I don't say this lightly. There is a limited list of people that belong in Gitmo, but that man has engaged in outright obstruction of justice, and he has allied himself with a hostile foreign intelligence service to block the investigation. It's astounding. But thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So your answer is it's not a wise idea then?
No, I don't think it's a wise idea. And I think, look, one of the few things that could rev up the Trump base, which is there is no red wave coming. Okay, there's no math that shows a red wave in the world. But if you turn this into this existential crisis for the Fox audience, I assure you they're going to look for every Democrat who whispers the word impeachment to turn that into a headline news story every single day, because they know that will motivate that hard partisan core in the GOP to stick and to maybe get out and vote in numbers greater than they have in the specials in 17 and 18.
Thank you.
Hi, Rick.
Hi.
I'm actually from Tallahassee.
Get out.
Yeah,
Where?
Friends with Nora.
Oh.
Went to land with her.
Yeah.
But as such, I wanted
My
to
daughter,
ask,
Nora.
Yeah. I wanted to ask your opinion about the down ballot races in Florida.
Sure.
As a never Trump Republican, where do you
Ballot's
stand?
close in about 20 minutes.
Yeah. Where do you stand on voting for candidates who may agree with you in a policy perspective, but would probably just rubber stamp Trump?
I have a lot of trouble with that because I don't think Trumpism is either conservative or Republican. And so I'm going to case by case a lot of those because a lot of these people that, and look, a lot of these electeds fall into a couple categories. One category is folks who are scared to death of Donald Trump's mob. And that is a huge factor in the psychology of elected officials right now. They are absolutely petrified that he's going to tweet something mean about them. And their social media is going to fill up with cuckoo pants and all these people that are, edge cases. There is another group of them who are as opportunistic as hell, and they're playing the rubes. They're playing the mooks out there. And, I will vote with Mr. Trump's agenda no matter what. And they're going to, the second they get free into the general, they're going to swing back in the middle. Now, it's going to be hard in Florida for Ron DeSantis if he wins the primary tonight, which he probably will. Right. It's going to be hard to run ads saying, I'm an independent voice for Florida. And then Gwen Graham, or whoever the Democrat is going to run ads saying, this is Ron DeSantis reading Trump's book to his kid, dressing his kid as Donald Trump, wearing a blonde wig to look like Donald Trump, ask his wife to call him Donald. So I think there's going to be, tonight you're going to probably see a couple of Trumpers pick up some primary seats in Florida. I think the Democrats in Florida, and bear with me here because it's been a long time, they may actually for once make the smart choice and nominate Gwen Graham. Mm-hmm. Because I will tell you, in the current political climate, a centrist Democratic woman in Florida, which is a purple state, if you look at the last 5 presidential elections, you know how many votes separate the two candidates in the last 5 elections? 20,000. Okay? It's close. Remember that thing in 2000? Yeah. I do. Anyway, so I think that's where that's at. See me after.
Okay, thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
So this may be a follow-on from the preceding questions.
No follow-ons.
You've said often that you do not see the Republican House in particular ever turning on Trump. Is there any hypothesis where you can imagine them hitting rock bottom? I don't know.
Let me describe one for you. Donald Trump performs an abortion, as Ann Coulter once said, on the White House lawn while taking a sack of money from Vladimir Putin, then eating a dog, and then declaring he's a Sharia Muslim and advocating for gay marriage to Stephen Miller. In that case, there might be a moment of pause.
That could happen by Tuesday at this rate.
Well, yeah, look. Both the amplitude and the frequency of the crazy is getting larger at all points. Look, they have decided that any compromise is worthwhile for Trump. They have decided no matter what he says or does, and no matter how much it hurts them, that they will stick with this guy till the last dog dies. And now in the House of Representatives, there are 50 guys who are crazies, who are Trumpers. Maybe 40, maybe 50. There are a whole bunch of people who are petrified of him and they hate him. Even guys who sit with him, who stand behind him wearing the red hat, who talk about the glory and wonder of Trumpism, and they hate him. They are disgusted. One of them may be leaving because he was in a former leadership position, and there are a bunch of opportunists who want to make their own way and be the next Trump, and they want to play it out as long as they can and see if they can pass bills that they can manipulate him into doing. But it's going to be a lot harder in November after that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm a big fan of With Friends Like These that you come on about
Thank
once
you.
a month with Anna Marie Cox.
Doing it tomorrow.
So excited. Something you said in the last episode really has thrown me for a loop, and about how Democrats, whenever they say anything about gun violence, the Republican base swells.
Mhm.
So if every town for gun safety hired you to message
No.
about how to make us safer,
Okay,
what
here's
can we do?
what I would tell them right away. Stop talking about gun control. Stop talking about gun control. I will tell you this, Democrats, this breaks their hearts because they believe in their hearts that the gun performs the crime, that the gun is the agent, not the person. Every time you look at a purple seat or a red seat where a Republican mysteriously wins and a guy like me is doing the ads, you know how I do it? I go to your Democratic male voters and I talk to them about guns. You know why? Because they don't believe you. They think you want to take their gun. They will always believe it. It is so burned into the American psyche, and Democrats have been stupid about it because they did the assault weapons ban, which ensured 1994 and 98, and it went on and rolled on and on and on. The consequences to Democrats of advocating for gun control, it is an issue that has no parallel in the Republican side or the Democratic side. There's nothing that activates Democrats as strongly. People say, oh, abortion. No, nothing. I will go and take your lunch money every time if you have a candidate who is pro-gun control. And that is maybe the one reason Gwen Graham doesn't survive in Florida, is because everything north of the I-4 corridor is going to be pro-gun. And I'll tell you this, Democrats misread their base a lot of the time. A couple of years ago, I took the Florida voter file, okay, about 17 million people. And I took the Florida concealed carry permit file, about 1.4 million people. And I ran the numbers. 38.5% of the concealed carry holders were Democrats. Of that percentage, a bunch of them were high propensity, like 60% were high propensity voters. Y'all don't even understand your own base. I tell Democrats this all the time. You don't get your own base. And if it doesn't matter how you feel about the issue, it matters what the politics and the mechanics of the politics are. And they lose on this time and time and time again. You know what? Moms for gun safety, whatever it is, you know what they should do? They should steal the NRA's idea and do gun safety training for people. And then they would show people you're not trying to take their guns, you're not trying to steal a fundamentally constitutionally guaranteed right. And by the way, when Democrats get into the weeds, go, no one needs anything but a musket because the Constitution. It makes the people who own and enjoy guns, which there are 350 million guns in this country and about 70 million gun owners. It makes them think you guys just are you're just assholes and you want to take their guns. This is like it's like I'm speaking Sanskrit to people when I try to tell them this. But
I know I work at a school, so I get stressed, but
Yeah.
yeah, I just want it to be better.
yeah, I know.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Rick.
Hi.
I was continuing the Florida theme here. I was down in Key West last week, and I visited the Truman Little White House.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone else has been there. There is actually a table in the Truman White House where he played poker every night, and before he went to bed, they would actually put a cover on the poker table
Yep.
to disguise the fact that Truman was playing poker, because it was bad or seen, unfortunately. I'm wondering, in light of this and in light of this president, I used to sort of respect the office of the presidency, and in even the ones that I disagreed with, and that several. Now that we have seen this guy go crazy on Twitter and the potential for having colluded with the foreign power, which ruins me at my core.
It wasn't potential.
Ruins me at my core. Do you ever see the sanctity of office ever returning in the future?
Yeah, I'm going to actually shock you with something because the most effective theme that was tested during W. Bush's run for the White House, the most successful theme after compassionate conservatism, which actually really people believed it, bought it, was restoring honor and dignity to the White House. Because Bill Clinton ran it like a frat house. Now, I think it's going to take a long time for people to get back to a point where probity and dignity. Look, George Washington, he thought the most important characteristic of a president was first not to become a king, but the second was dignity. And you got a guy upstairs rage tweeting in the Oval Office or in the executive bedroom every night, surrounded by a bed full of Filet-O-Fish wrappers and rage tweeting all night. And it's hard to think of him as a dignified person. You got a guy with a gigantic chin waddle who thinks he's like babe meat. And he just, the whole affect of Trump is clownish. And so that makes it harder to believe in that stature of the presidency. So, but look, it'll come back. There will be the next person who's president, one hopes, will recognize that there's a value to be had by a president who shows dignity and strength and quiet rectitude sometimes, as opposed to being a giant rectum all the time. So,
Thank you.
Not bad.
Hi there.
Hi.
I know that you have said that you have friends in the administration,
I have a couple.
and that they call you to moan for
From time to time.
From time to time.
Yesterday was a bad day.
I bet it was. I bet it was. Do they seriously think, because at some point a credible conservative administration will come back to this government? Do they seriously?
Anyone in the Trump administration, short of maybe Jim Mattis, should probably seek employment at, say, a gas station somewhere in the Midwest after this, because this is going to scar them and mark them forever.
Right.
I mean, it is one of the predicates of the book, and it's proving itself out time and time and time again.
They don't even get credit for being competent.
No, and here's the thing. When they call, you know what I tell them every time for advice? Quit. Walk out the door now and tell the truth. Walk out the door now and say what's going on. But my NDA. Shred it. Make them take you to court. Make them go to discovery. And a lot of these people that Trump brought in, let's put it this way. When Trump sends us people to work in the administration, he's not sending his best. Thank you.
Thank you.
You wrote a question out.
Yes, I wrote it down because I can't remember what I did 20 seconds ago. So I say this as someone, a young, recent college graduate who's unemployed, who probably makes Bernie Sanders look like a centrist. I actually asked Noah Rothman this last year at an event at my college. And I was looking at a University of Chicago poll that said that a majority, I think it's 60% of people aged 18 to 35 don't see capitalism, the sort of core of conservatism, as the thing that can solve the most pressing issues of our time. And what I asked Noah last year, and I'd love to hear it from a rock-ribbed conservative like yourself, what can you do to steer maybe not people like me, but maybe people flirting with the idea of the left back to the ideas of conservatism?
One of the things is that my party has to get its head out of its own backside on crony capitalism. Because what we've done for a long time, and what this tax bill did, was take care of a specific industry in the legislation. Now, I was told when Barack Obama was president that picking winners and losers was a bad thing. The tax bill picked 150 some winners in the hedge fund and Wall Street world, and about 60 guys out there in the economy, and they got 85% of the benefits of a tax bill that requires 5% economic growth, 4.1% economic growth to sustain itself. It's ridiculous. We're picking winners and losers by protecting the coal industry, which should be dead by now. So Republicans have not been a good example of free market capitalism in Congress for a long time. And this goes back before Trump. I've been a critic of this, of my own party, of this before Trump, where we have decided that free market capitalism is great, except if a guy gave us a big enough donation to the super PAC, then we're going to make sure that his industry, including it could be, a dead industrial sector completely, that Congress says, okay, we're going to keep buying buggy whips from this guy because the buggy whip industry is the heart of American commerce. Capitalism works when it's tried, and socialism often leads to people starving and freezing in the dark. So and I know everyone's gonna say, oh, the Norwegian nations, and the Scandinavian nations. Yes, they're lovely, but they're bijou examples of this that don't scale necessarily to macro economies like ours. But anyway, it's a hard road, and it's going to have to be something that requires some reform and self-correction inside the GOP to get back to a free market and free trade capitalism system. So thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Rick.
Hi.
Big fan. Great book, +1 Old Ocelot.
Ah, yes.
Does the Trump administration have any policy successes for the remainder of the Trump administration except by tearing down Obama-era regulation?
Well, Donald Trump proved in the very first weeks of his administration that he can't pass legislation. I mean, the House and the Senate had Obamacare repeal cocked and locked. It was going to be smooth. They were going to jam it through. They were going to, as a leadership member said to me, pull a Pelosi and smash Obamacare repeal through. And then the giant man baby came in and started interrupting and started saying things on Twitter and then describing the bill as mean. And so there's a reason they're sending Trump bills to sign that are like renaming bridges and the Post Office Reform Act. You know, it's small ball stuff because they don't trust him with the big important stuff. So they're going to keep doing policy changes. They're going to keep doing the pen and the phone that they hated Obama for. And they're going to keep doing executive orders, even though conservatives used to scream their heads off. Barack Obama is acting like a dictator because he's passing, he's signing these executive orders. And he's got a limited portfolio of things he can do. I predict he's going to keep trying to keep the coal industry thing moving and the steel tariffs moving because he believes those are the key to West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, the whole Pennsylvania region there, and all that. So, thanks.
Excellent, great book. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
A question I haven't heard from anybody is: what about the Russians, the Russian money, and the oligarchs? What do you have to say about that? And where are the Republicans on this?
Let me give you the sort of technical description of that. There's a lot of it. He's been taking it for a long time, well beyond 2016. He is deeply embedded with a whole bunch of Russian mobsters and has been since the 80s. When they peel this back, and I'll tell you the reason Donald Trump lives in absolute mortal terror, where it's like strap on the extra diaper when they mention getting his taxes, because this is a man who knows once they start peeling apart the relationships with the banks and with the Russian lending and the loan guarantees from Russians from like the Bank of Cyprus to Deutsche Bank and all these other things. And by the way, there are people who are experts on this, like well beyond my knowledge. Craig Unger's book is great about this, but we're going to learn that this whole, I have no business with the Russians, I don't know any Russians. We're going to discover that is a complete fabrication. And the behavior of their campaign, look, Paul Manafort is not a guy you hire because you're like, I need someone who's really dedicated to clean government. He's a guy you hire because he brings in a bunch of money from his friends in Moscow. And the oligarchs have gotten used to buying elections in a lot of countries, and they played a big role in this one. And I think you're going to see that come out, not only in the investigations that peel back Trump's business and financial and tax records, but also in the Mueller investigation itself. Thank you.
Who are the Democrats' strongest and weakest candidates in 2020?
That is a great question, and I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to tell you what they need, not who it is. The Democrats in 2020, I'm going to give you a scale, like a thermometer scale, right up here. Right up here. I'm going to stand up a little higher. Right up here. Be great on TV. Kick ass on TV. Be engaging, smart, witty, funny. Take it to Trump. Just kick his ass on TV all the time. Now, so that disqualifies about 40% of all Democratic candidates who are thinking about it. And of course, Hillary Clinton with the Broken Robot Act could never be that charismatic person, okay? Second part, raise a butt ton of money because you're going to need it, because Trump is going to get the same media vacuum he got last time, so you're going to have to buy that exposure. You're going to have to get in that fight and buy it. It sucks. It's horrible. But there's a lot of money out there opposed to Trump. And that's the next part. Now, let me give you the important part about policy. The policy part, voters didn't vote for a policy with Trump. They voted for an emotion. That emotion was rage. They loved it. They loved that whole act. So the Democrats need somebody that can activate their people and who has great fight on the battlefield we're going to actually fight on. So I look at an Elizabeth Warren, that school marm technocrat. Yeah. You may love her, but make her Secretary of the Treasury or something. And I know people are like, oh, what about Avenatti? Maybe. The guy's got smack. He can shit talk like nobody's business, and he's under Trump's skin so far. And you may find somebody else that can do that. There may be some other rising star. Look, if Beto O'Rourke wins in Texas, it's a long shot. That guy wins in Texas, he's going to be a rocket in the Democratic Party. He will be a guy who's a giant killer. and he's good on his feet, and he's smart. And his answer the other day on the anthem question was as good. I mean, I sat there watching that going, I wish I'd written that. Damn. So, thank you.
We have time for this one last question.
All right, hook it up.
Hi, Rick.
Hey.
Big fan.
Thank you.
So I work in polling, and I'm very curious what you think.
You want to tell me who?
I work for a local company,
Okay.
A tech company called GeoPoll.
Okay, yeah. I know who you are.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Could you speak a little bit closer?
Yeah, sorry. So I'm just curious what you think, where we're going with political polling for the next presidential election, and really how, I think from my work I've seen that the general public's trust in polling has just been demolished based on...
Yeah, I think you and I can both acknowledge that 600 sample national polls are no longer effective as a tool. I have a couple of research agencies and firms that I've used and helped put together over the years, and everything counts in large amounts. So we're doing thousands and thousands more interviews than we ever have, and we're doing robos, but we're overcoming the inaccuracy of it with just sheer volume, sheer tonnage. I think we're going to have to continue to merge polling with other data, consumer data and behavioral data, and the stuff we're seeing online. We're able to get much quicker than we have in the past. But I think as a tracking mechanism, it's god awful. As a quantitative exercise, it's a train wreck. Unfortunately, as a media prompt, there's almost nothing that drives media faster during a campaign season than a poll showing somebody up, down, good, bad. So it's a longer discussion than we could have here, and a fairly technical one. But I'm a big fan of way more interviews, and I don't even care about the trivialities of the inside campaign stuff. It's mostly junk these days. So,
thank you.
All right.